Hello, everyone, and welcome to another LinkedIn Live. I'm your host, James Poulter. If you're watching this on the Vixen Labs channels, or if you're watching this on my profile, then you probably know who I am. So I won't do any more than say I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders at Vixen Labs. And we do these things periodically, sporadically, but as the news warrants. And we thought that we would do a special session today on LinkedIn to compare two of the big AI news stories in the world of conversational for the past couple of weeks, and that is the evolution and release of Google's Bard search engine, or search experiment maybe is more the right term, and comparing that to some of the recent additions to the Bing search engine, now powered by GPT-4 or ChatGPT behind the scenes. So that's what we're going to do. So this session is entitled Bada Bing, Bada Boom. I hope you enjoy that. And I'm joined, as I often am, by one of my colleagues from Vixen, Rich Merrett, who's one of our creative strategists. Rich, lovely to see you this afternoon or this morning, depending on where people are watching. You doing all right?
Absolutely brilliant. Pleasure to be here again. I love these.
Happy. So we're going to have a little chat here about a few different aspects of kind of what conversational search is looking like at the moment, what the kind of landscape looks like. We'll talk a little bit about kind of Bard in particular, and obviously some of the additions that have come out in the past couple of weeks, and then move our focus back to talk about Bing, and also just do a bit of comparison for people to kind of help them understand what's going on. But first of all, let's maybe have a little chat about kind of where conversational search is overall. Rich, we've been playing around with this stuff quite a lot. What's of these two? Where have you been spending more of your time?
So, I've been spending a lot of time in with Bing to start with, and a lot of that is because of its origins and how it's all built. And we can maybe go into that in a moment. But I have over the last sort of 2 weeks. Is it 2 weeks since Google I/O? I'm losing track of time now. Since Google I/O, playing a lot more with Bard. So since Bard kind of went live to the world, playing with it a lot more. And I think you're right in calling it the experiment. And actually, I was chatting with it earlier, and one of the things that it did say was, "I am an experiment." So it's very clear on that point. But I do think that they both have their pros and cons. There's both things that I really like. There's things that I don't like. Looking earlier at holidays, we're in holiday season, and
For some of us, at least, we hope some
oh,
of
yeah.
us on holiday.
Bing will quite happily give you lots of links to all the suggestions that it's coming up with, and it's very good at kind of throwing out its sources. Whereas Bard is a bit more cagey. Is well, you could go look here, as opposed to this is explicitly where you should go and look.
Got it. So yeah, definitely some slightly different attitudes. And I think what we'll do is maybe just unpack a little bit here, because for some people who've been playing around with these experiments while they were maybe in beta mode before they've kind of come to more general availability, you'll know that there is this kind of weird hybridization going on between what we might call a search engine and a chatbot. And then there's these things which sit somewhere between a search engine and a chatbot, and they're neither, but they're both. And so I think that's an important distinction to make. So why don't we jump in and kind of let me bring up a screen share here. So first of all, let's talk about a little bit about kind of what Bard is, and also what Bard isn't. Google will kind of give you an example here that it can do all sorts of interesting things. It can help you do things. And when they first announced this to the world, it felt like it was more a direct competitor to ChatGPT, more of a conversational AI bot that you could kind of talk to. And with the announcements that came out a couple of weeks ago at I/O, it felt like we were moving more into as much as they caveat here, I'm an experiment. It feels like this is now moving into somewhere between a chatbot and a search engine. So let's kind of go and give this a good example. And why don't we start first of all by just saying that everyone now has access to Bard, right? Tell us a little bit about kind of what's happened there, Rich.
So originally it started off as a kind of a closed beta, and it moved out to a beta that you had to sign up for, and you had to join the kind of the Google Labs waiting list and access it that way. As of Google I/O, it became available to everyone. Now, an important caveat is it is still in beta. like Google are very clear that this is still a beta product. It's just beta for everyone. And what's also quite interesting is right at the beginning when they had it, you had to have labs access to be able to gain, like, to be able to use this. It was only individuals' Gmail accounts, because you've got to have a Gmail account to play with it. And it was only individual Gmail accounts. What's interesting now is they have opened that up to Google Workspace so that companies and businesses can use this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as you can see here, I just prompted it in with a kind of quite simple prompt that you might kind of conversationally search for an answer for. So, not that this says anything about my kind of evening last night, but how do you get a red wine stain out of a carpet? Quite an obvious thing that people might be asking, a more conversational search term. And of course, it's gone and just given us a bunch of answers. Now, it can also give us different options for this, which I think is quite interesting. You can see it's generated several different answers to that, even without kind of asking for it. Now, I'm in a workspace-based account here. I'm on my Vixen Labs account. I'm just going to jump in to show you what kind of Bard might look like if you're using a personal account and ask it the same thing. How do you get a red wine stain? Let's see if this does what I think it's going to do. Now, I've seen some differences here, features being turned on and off. So this is a live demo. Yes, exactly. I thought as much. So here, because I'm in a personal account, maybe you can see this if I scroll up here. We have this extra little button which says export response. Now, if you're in a personal account, you should be able to see this unless you're using a workspace account, which I now also have a couple of options to export this directly to a doc or draft this in Gmail, which you're not necessarily going to see if you are in a workspace account. You see that is absent from here. So a couple of different variations already. And the real question I suppose here is this a search engine or is it a chatbot? Well, it's kind of both, I think is what we can officially say. A couple of weeks ago, Rich, you mentioned a little bit about I/O and some of the examples that they shared. But it wasn't just in Bard. There's also this kind of generative search that's coming as well. What's the difference there? What should we expect?
So the difference really is that, if you think about your Google searches and you think about when you're typing something into Google right now, that is a great example, the one that you've just put forward there. With this generative search, we're thinking more about enhancing your searches with responses and making things just a little bit more conversational. What's I think is a really interesting thing is, when we do search for things on Google, and when you search for things with voice, you do have that conversational tone. You don't just, you wouldn't just type into Google potentially red wine stained carpet, which would give you exactly the same results in a regular engine as how do you get a red wine stain out of a carpet. And what we're going to see with integration with Google and various other search engines are doing similar things, is having this conversational output with all the links that you need to find out a little bit more information and prompts to kind of dig a bit deeper.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. Seeing a little bit more than just your average search, basically. And here's an example coming from, this is from the I/O blog post that came out a couple of weeks ago from the keyword blog at Google, showing you exactly this. So this is it's worth kind of stating for people, this is not the same thing as Bard, right? Bard is its own.
These are very, and that is actually a really, really important distinction that I think is sometimes overlooked, is that Bard is its own thing. This integration with Google is its own thing. Just like with Bing, they have their own thing as well, and there's like a chatbot element of that is its own.
Exactly. So we're seeing slightly different kind of, I suppose, kind of interfaces here. One which feels much more like you're searching in a chatbot. Oh, for some reason I've got two of me and none of Rich. Hang on, where have you gone? Sorry. We've got you came back. So we've got a couple of different things going on. We've got like the effect of search in and of its own experience, shall we say, and then we have chat, which is a form of searching because we're using it to kind of get answers and questions answered, but it's not the same thing as a search because it has that kind of ongoing persistence, which the generative search that we were just looking at, it doesn't have. So okay, so that's an interesting thing. So we've got in Google, there's going to become these kind of two different potential options, right? something that's more search based, and something that is more chat based. Now let's pivot over and talk a little bit about what's happening with our friends at Microsoft and Bing. Now it's worth saying Bing and Google, Bing and Google, very different things. Obviously, Bing minority market share compared to Google, so we shouldn't expect that there's going to be some overnight influx of people moving from one to the other, right?
No, absolutely not. And Google is its own verb, right? When you're searching something, we Google, and so they are very, very different, and they do have very, very different audiences. Especially when you think about like Windows machines being built in with Microsoft Edge that might not then go to use Google and have a default as being for some of our users that aren't as technically inclined. So
Right.
there are different audiences with these two.
And in Bing in particular here, again, we've got two things kind of going on, and it's worth making, well, maybe even three things. So we've got ChatGPT over there, which is OpenAI's GPT 3.5 and now GPT 4 model running in a conversational chat, which now can search. Then we've got Bing, which has now been enhanced with, as it describes itself, the kind of the co-pilot for the web, which now relying upon the AI tools that they are licensing from OpenAI, of which Microsoft is a majority investor in. You can now get enhanced search results from these with answers and summaries. As you can see here, we've got some examples of how they are tapping into this and being able to do a new type of search result. So this is the Bing search result here, kind of pulling in some examples. Hopefully you can see that okay on the screen.
What I really like about these is the citation, is the fact that it'll highlight stuff, it'll link stuff out this way. It's a really, really cool way of searching, and it's a really useful and practical way of searching as well. Like I mentioned this holiday example earlier. I'm looking through and it's saying, oh, you could go here or here or here. This is particularly cheap. And it's saying, the Azores or somewhere is quite cheap. And it's giving me a link directly to a travel agent's website with the little number next to it to go straight to look for the Azores there.
So you've got a couple of different things kind of going on. So we've got this chat interface, and then there is also Bing's chatbot interface as well. So we can go and kind of talk to Bing in a kind of back and forth kind of Q&A chat mode, which is similar to talking to ChatGPT, but not the same thing because it still has the references from the open web. So we see, again, another variation of this. I suppose the real question for all of us is like, well, so what? Like, what difference does it make having an AI-driven search versus something that is more conventional? Like, and I think that's the real question for most people who, if you're kind of a business person thinking about this and what's it going to do. One of the things that we've been talking a lot with clients at Vixen has been around the areas of optimizing these large language models for different kind of for search, right? So we've been doing this for some time now with different clients of optimizing their web pages for voice search. But this is different, isn't it? We're talking about something slightly different here from optimizing for a voice keyword search than optimizing a large language model. Maybe just help me tease out some of those key differences.
Yeah, so I mean, you think about when you're searching for voice, we're looking for very explicit keywords. We're looking for very clear things. Now, when we're looking at something like this with a large language model, it's looking at it very, very differently. Now, I think JP, you obviously know a lot about this kind of search stuff. You are one of, if not the one of the clearest, biggest brains in SEO. In conversational, certainly in my phone book.
Well, that's a smaller group.
So perhaps if you could elaborate, what do you think for if you were searching, let's say on this Bing, the examples that we've just been looking at, what would you say that a business really needs to include to kind of get them towards the top of that result, get them the ones that people are going to be talking to a search engine with, and teasing the answers out that way, as opposed to the normal way that we do it?
Good question. So, well, let's do a practical example. So, Here I am in just kind of conventional Google search, and let's start with exactly that same kind of query of how do I get a red wine stain out, right? And okay, first thing to note is that unlike in the generative platforms, I am being prompted with a whole bunch of suggestions immediately by Google itself. You don't see this happening in ChatGPT. You don't see this happening elsewhere. So the first thing to say is that like there's already insight here in terms of what content is going to be worth asking for, because there's Google already knows that a bunch of people ask this question. So let's just go with how get red wine out of carpet. Now that might seem like a really minor point, but you raised it a minute ago as well, Rich. It's like, we don't type and talk to search engines in the same way that we talk to these conversational bots, right? So to your point, if I was to go over to my Google Home here and ask it this question, hey Google, how do I get red wine out of the carpet? I'm going to ask that in a full length sentence. Hey Google, stop. Now, interestingly, that result, right? First thing to note is no 10 blue links, no options, just immediate dialogue being read out. Now, let's go and ask the same question here in Google, and you can already see it's truncated it. It's taken out certain words because clearly people have been lazy when typing into the search engine, and it's like, how get red wine out of carpet? Okay, well, let's just go with that. Now, interestingly, just so you can't see this, it's too small over here on the screen, but this result that came up on the Google Nest Hub behind me is from mollymade.com. They're a UK-based cleaning company, and they've obviously got a guide on how to do this on their website. Now, that's the position 0 result for that full-length query that I've asked. Here, we've got a slightly different thing going on. Let me just move this screen share for you guys so you can see. So here, we've got a slightly different thing happening, which is we've got a slightly truncated search term going on, obviously, to begin with, which is how get red wine out of carpet. And this knowledge box that's been pulled up on the search result is actually referring us to a completely different article, not that Molly Made article that we've just seen come up there. And the Molly Made article that I think that's probably been pulled from, if I scroll down far enough, here it is, 5th result on this set of links. Now, a couple of different things happening there. One, we're asking different questions because we're saying it out loud, or we're typing it into a chatbot. If we're typing to what we think is an embodied entity of some description, like one of Bing or Bard, we're more likely to write things out in full sentences because we're asking it a question. We're not just, to your point earlier, bashing in a keyword. So that's one of the big differences in terms of this. And then obviously in terms of what gets read out, if we're on a voice device, we're just going to get that knowledge box result, which we've just seen kind of come out here. Now, if we jump into Bard and kind of show exactly the same question once again, which is, and I'll do it both ways. Let's do it. Sorry, trying to do this on zoomed in is difficult. Let's do how get out red wine carpet. Not a full sentence. The difference here is that a large language model is at play, so it's going to work out what I was meaning because it doesn't need those full keywords, right? That's the big difference.
That is the big difference, and I think one of the important things to note is there is a level of like ingenuity with some of these things when it comes to spelling. Some of them are much better at understanding spelling mistakes than others, and I think and Bard is particularly good at working out typos. So that's also just something to bear in mind when we're thinking about this, because if you're spelling something very, very wrong, it might just go, I have no idea what this thing is. So help me out here. But yeah, to your point, yeah, I think it's having that full response there being written in any way, any variation, is a really handy tool. And being able to, so you can say, get red wine carpet, right?
And it helps you be kind of more actionable off the back of it. But I think from a business perspective, one of the big differences is that it means we've got to optimize for different things. So historically, from an SEO perspective, we've optimized keywords on pages, links to different pages, header tags, kind of H1s, kind of link back structure, and some of these kind of different core elements of programming the web for, now, 3 or 4 decades of doing that. And what's different with these large language models is that they're relying upon a couple of different things. Yes, now that some of them are connected to the web, particularly these two that we've been comparing today, Bard and Bing, and also if you think about ChatGPT now having web browsing access, although it's not quite the same thing, it's creating a search query off the back of your request, going and searching, clicking on links itself autonomously, and then bringing back results, which is a slightly difficult thing to get your head around,
Very
but that's what's
easy to
going on.
watch that.
Really cool to watch. If you haven't tried it yet, please go and give it a go. But one of the things that I think is fascinating about this is that it means we have to optimize for different things. And that means that when the language model is out there trying to do its job, it's relying upon, yes, the content that's coming from these links, but it's also relying upon its inherent knowledge base that it's been trained on. In the case of GPT 3.5, a big corpus of the web's open data, links, articles, etc., up till September 2021, which is why we know we get things like hallucinations and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think what else is really important to think about is, whereas like you look at those search results that you've got on Google and the one that you got on your Nest Hub just then, is they're pulling from just one source.
Yes.
Now we have the ability to pull from various different sources to get a different answer, and then link out to those different things. So, let's think about getting red wine out of a carpet. There might be a particular product that is very, very good at that, which could have a little link. But there also might, you might want to dab it with a cloth. So there's another link to a cloth company. And all of those little steps can now be part of that answer, as opposed to just that one block from Molly May or from Good Housekeeping, as the other one was.
And it means that the whole search landscape, if this is the direction of travel, becomes much more competitive again, because it's no longer one set of signals that you can be sending to Google to solve that problem. Nor is it just Google that matters, although, as I say, when you add up the user bases of Bing and even ChatGPT, it pales into insignificance. But it's still a hugely significant move, because it means that the whole market is going to move in that direction. So we've got Bing, they're trying to kind of challenge. We've got Bard, which might be the future of Google, and then we've got ChatGPT, which might just be something all over different. Rich, if people wanted to get started with these things, where do they go? Where would you recommend people starting, or what could they try out?
So I would recommend ChatGPT first, and you can create an account for free. You can play with it for free, so you can play with GPT 3.5 for free. The thing that you might have heard about in the news is GPT-4. There is a plus account, a plus layer that you can purchase and play with that. That also allows you a little bit more security around like remembering what you're writing and taking away, not using your information as training data. So the GPT is always great. Google Bard, you Google it, it's a verb. You Google Bard and you'll find a link, and you'll be able to play with that for free. All you need is a Gmail account. Now for Bing, you will need to download Microsoft Edge, which if you're using a Mac, you may not have. If you're using a Windows machine, you have no choice, but it was with your Windows machine.
It came bolted in there. Although, worth noting, you can try the mobile app.
Yes, and this is that's another point with US users. ChatGPT now is also a mobile app on iOS. It is due to come to Android and the rest of the world at some point soon. So yeah, there are various different mediums, but you can try them all for free, and it is worth giving them a go and just typing in whatever you're feeling like. Have you dropped red wine?
Whatever issue you might have come across this afternoon, or whenever you're watching. Well, Rich, thanks so much for taking the time to help us walk through some of this stuff. I hope that unpacked it for you guys watching wherever you are. You can find both of us on social media in all the usual places. You'll find comments below these videos wherever you're watching to get in touch. And if you've got any questions that you want to dig into this deeper, a couple of things I would recommend that you go and check out. One, go over to vixenlabs.co and sign up for our newsletter called The Conversation. It comes out every week, including a bunch of roundups of what's happening in the world of news, some of which are written by yours truly and Rich. So we'd love it if you've got thoughts and comments on that. Stay up to date with what's happening in the world of conversational AI, and go and find that newsletter at, as I say, vixenlabs.co/newsletter. Very easy to go and sign up. And stay tuned. Here we'll be doing more episodes like this to break down some of this stuff in the world of the social and conversational web. And for now, thanks so much, Rich, for joining us. And we'll see you all very soon.
Take care.
Bye.